The moment the Chancellor lifted the obsidian seal, every noble in the Hall of Measures stopped breathing, because that seal meant exile, execution, or both. I stood on the lower ring of the amphitheater, a human in plain envoy gray, no banners behind me, no lineage to invoke. The Virellians measured worth in bloodline and oaths, and I had neither, only a thin dossier and a name they still pronounced like a cough. Above us, the star map hovered in the air like a living accusation. A quiet yellow sun, tagged with a new label in human registry code. Human envoy Kael Roran, the High Chancellor said, voice perfectly calm. You have committed a symbolic seizure. A ripple of metallic jewelry chimed as heads turned. Virellian etiquette forbade open hostility in the hall. They expressed it through precision. I forced my hands to remain open at my sides. I didn't seize anything. The Stellar Register lists a designation, he continued. A designation tied to her radiance. A human name attached to a Virellian sovereign is, by our law, an attempt to bind fate. He tilted his chin a fraction, and the star map zoomed. The label pulsed. Saeryn's lanterned. A lady in silver lacquer leaned toward another. A commoner's superstition, a foreigner's insult, her companion murmured. From the high dais, Queen Saeryn remained still. No crown of conquest, no theatrical armor. Only a dark mantle with a thin line of starlight embroidery, subtle, almost defiant. Her expression was controlled, but her eyes did not leave the hovering star. The Chancellor's gaze pinned me. Explain why you filed this claim. I could have lied. I could have begged. I could have said the translator corrupted my request. But my brother's voice, warm, laughing, rose in my memory, and the grief I had spent years filing into neat boxes cracked open. It was a joke, I said softly. A private one, a joke, a noble spat, careful to keep her tone formal. In our court. I swallowed. I wrote it because she was the first Virellian who didn't look at me like a tool. The Chancellor's lips barely moved. And you believed that warranted a star. It warranted something, I said, then regretted the honesty immediately. Speak the phrase, the Chancellor ordered. The exact phrase you used. Court requires verbatim admission. My throat went dry. I looked up once, just once, to the dais. Saeryn's eyes met mine, silver black, unreadable. Not approval. Not warning. Permission, I'm tied. I named a star after her as a joke. She made it the capital of her empire, I said clearly, each word falling into the hall like a dropped blade. A collective inhale. Someone whispered, he confesses to empire making. Another hissed, he dares imply she is moved by human whim. The Chancellor raised the seal again. Then by statute, enough, Queen Saeryn said. Her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. The acoustics of the hall were designed for hierarchy. The air itself seemed to carry her authority. The Chancellor froze mid-sentence. Your radiance. You will not use my name as a cudgel, Saeryn replied, still watching the star map. The human spoke a truth you cannot measure. He named what he saw. She turned her gaze to the nobles. And you are frightened because a name, given without leverage, reveals how thin your leverage is. A duke in crimson rose with practiced elegance. Your radiance, the right of binding forbids any outsider from attaching destiny to. Destiny is not owned, Saeryn cut in. Only enforced. Her eyes returned to me. Envoy Kael Roran. Did you know our right? No, ma'am, I said. I barely know which fork is an insult here. A few nobles flinched at the informality. Saeryn's mouth twitched, the smallest crack in her composure. Not a smile, but not nothing. Then you acted without malice, she said, which makes this court's malice instructive. The Chancellor recovered enough to speak. What is your command? Saeryn lifted her hand. A gesture like a blade sliding from a sheath. Clear the hall. Gasps, again, but softer. No one moved. Saeryn's voice hardened. Now. A tide of silk and metal retreated, reluctant but obedient. The doors sealed. The star map dimmed until only Saeryn's lantern remained. When the last echo died, Saeryn stepped down from the dais herself. Every protocol said she should not. Every noble would record it as weakness. She stopped an arm's length from me. You are either reckless, she said, or honest. Both, I admitted. Silence stretched. In Virellian culture, silence was speech, an arena where rank decided who blinked first. Saeryn blinked first. My court has rejected me, she said. Not as complaint, but as fact. Not for politics, for daring to be unclaimed. Her fingers lifted, hovering near my sleeve without touching it. You were not supposed to see me. I did, I said. And you named what you saw, she murmured. I felt the old wound stir. The funeral on a rain-soaked earth hill, my brother's telescope dismantled in a cardboard box because the landlord didn't care about starlight. He died before humanity mattered out here, I said. I promised myself I wouldn't let what he loved become invisible. Saeryn studied me as if reading a star chart. Then, you will learn our laws, she said. And I will decide what that name becomes. Is that mercy? I asked. It is a test, she replied. And, perhaps, an opportunity. She finally touched my sleeve, 2 fingers, light as a pulse. Do not mistake restraint for softness, human. I won't, I said, and surprised myself by adding, but don't mistake my lack of rank for lack of spine. For the first time, she smiled, barely. Good. They tested me with etiquette first. The Palace of Waits assigned me a tutor, Lord Vathran, Saeryn's maternal cousin, and the sort of noble who could deliver an insult like a compliment. He paced around me in the practice chamber, as if I were a statue being appraised. Your posture is a confession, he said. Straighten. Humans fold themselves like apology. I'm not apologizing, I muttered, then corrected myself. My lord. Dush. Vathran's eyes narrowed in satisfaction. Better. Bosh. Now, the rite of binding. When a name is placed on a celestial body, it signals intention. In our tradition, only the sovereign, or a spouse candidate, may do so. I didn't know, I said. No, Vathran agreed. You did not. Which is why the court cannot decide whether to punish you or exploit you. He leaned close, voice dropping. Do you understand what they are whispering? That I tried to trap her, that you tried to claim her, he corrected. A foreign male claiming the queen would be humiliation. If the queen accepts it, it becomes revolution. My stomach tightened. I'm not here to humiliate her. Vathran's gaze sharpened. Then, why are you here? Because she looked lonely, I almost said. Because I recognized rejection in her stillness. Because my brother would have laughed at the idea that a star could start a war. I'm here because I can't undo it, I said. And because she asked me to learn. Vathran nodded once as if marking a ledger. The next test will not be etiquette. That evening, Saeryn summoned me, not to a throne room, but to the astral archive, a place of quiet light and ancient charts. She stood beside a physical telescope, not a hologram. Old craftsmanship. Personal. You chose an analog instrument, I said, before my brain could stop my mouth. Saeryn did not turn. Because analog does not flatter, she replied. It reveals. She gestured to the eyepiece. Look, Ta. I leaned in. The star, Saeryn's lantern, burned steady, unimpressed by politics. Beautiful, I breathed. You find beauty easily, she said. Not easily, I corrected. Just, honestly. Saeryn finally faced me. The room's dimness softened the sharpness of her features. She wore no royal mantle, only a simple dark robe with a single clasp. You used the word joke, she said. Explain a humor. I exhaled. On Earth, people used to buy novelty certificates. Name a star after someone. It's meaningless legally, but it means something emotionally. My brother hated it, called it selling emptiness. I swallowed. Then he died. And I kept thinking, if the galaxy is so big that a person becomes nothing, maybe the only rebellion is to name something anyway. Saeryn's gaze did not waver. You rebel with tenderness. The phrase hit like a hand on a bruise. I don't have ships, I said quietly. I don't have titles. I have stubbornness and memory. Saeryn's fingers slid along the telescope barrel. In my court, memory is controlled. Names are permitted only when power approves them. She paused and added, I was permitted nothing. I hesitated. Why? A faint tightening around her eyes. Because my bond candidates refused the right. Refused you? Refused what I represent, she corrected. A queen who will not marry for alliance alone. A queen who proposed a seat at the Council for Humanity. Her voice remained formal, but the edges cut deeper than anger. They called it weakness to negotiate with the new species. I felt heat in my chest. That's not weakness. Saeryn studied me for a long moment. In Virellian silence, she was asking questions without words. Finally, she said, do you know what a Virellian chooses when she cannot trust anyone? I shook my head. She chooses a principle, Saeryn said. A law she can stand on when people shift. She stepped closer, one pace only. So I chose the principle that frightened them. I chose you to remain. My throat tightened. Why me? Because you did not bargain, she answered. You did not demand. Her hand lifted, hovering again near my wrist. May I? The question, permission, felt like an earthquake in a culture built on entitlement. Yes, I said, voice rougher than I intended. Saeryn's fingers closed around my wrist, not gripping, just anchoring. Her skin was cool. In our right, she said softly. Touch is statement, not possession. Statement. She held my gaze. Say your statement. I swallowed hard. I'm not here to claim you, I said. I'm here to stand where you told me to stand, until you tell me to leave. Saeryn's thumb traced the pulse point once, as if verifying truth through blood. Good, she whispered. Then louder, formal again. Tomorrow you will face the Council of 12. They will attempt to fracture you. And you? I asked. Saeryn released my wrist. The absence of touch felt like cold air. I will watch, she said. And I will learn whether your spine is truly yours. Vathrin had been right. The next test would not be etiquette. It would be faith, mine, and hers. The Council of 12 sat in a ring of suspended platforms, each noble house represented by a figure cloaked in their colors. The air smelled faintly of ionized incense, ritual purification before political slaughter. I stood on the center disc. No weapon. No council. No banner. Just a human heartbeat in a room designed to make heartbeats feel insignificant. The Chancellor spoke first, measured as a scalpel. Envoy Kael Roran. The Queen petitions to relocate the imperial capital to the Lantern system, citing symbolic legitimacy derived from your naming act. He let the words hang. The council asks, are you her consort candidate? A dozen eyes pinned me, some curious, most predatory. I kept my voice steady. No. A noble in emerald laughed softly. Then you are nothing, a scribbler. I looked at him. I'm a man who kept his word to his dead brother. The emerald noble's smile thinned. Sentiment is not policy. It becomes policy when people stop pretending they are machines, I replied. A murmur, disapproval, interest, alarm. Another platform glided forward. Lady Karis of House Nerith, famous for tearing rivals apart with politeness. Human, she said, your species is new. Unproven. Your diplomacy is... nay. Loud. Why should our empire risk its stability to elevate you? I'm not asking to be elevated, I said. I'm asking you to stop using status as a substitute for honor. The word honor struck the room like an insult. Virellians claimed honor the way predators claim territory. Karis tilted her head. Define honor, then. I took a breath. I thought of my brother again, hands stained with grease from the telescope mount, eyes bright with wonder even when rent was overdue. Honor's doing what you said you would do, I said. Even when no one powerful is watching. Especially then. A platform shifted. Lord Vathrin, sitting as observer, gave nothing away. But his eyes held a warning. Careful. The Chancellor continued. Your naming act triggered our right of binding by precedent. That right requires the named sovereign to choose, accept the bond, or reject it publicly. He turned toward the high balcony, where Saeryn watched from behind a thin veil of light. Her posture was perfect. Untouchable. The Chancellor's voice sharpened. If she accepts, the Council must acknowledge you as political vector. If she rejects, the Lantern designation is void, and your presence here becomes treason. My lungs seized. So that was their trap. Force her to reject me publicly, to prove she was not moved by human softness. Humiliate her into obedience. A noble in crimson spoke, voice like silk wrapped around a knife. Your radiance, do you accept the bond implied by his naming? Saeryn's face did not change. But I saw it, just barely, the tension at her jaw, the micro pause that meant rage contained. The silence lasted long enough for the council to taste blood. Before she could answer, I stepped forward. It was not permitted. The guards did not move. Permission in Virellian law was often decided after the fact, depending on who benefited. Your radiance, I said loudly. Do not answer that. A wave of outrage surged. How dare! Silence him. Execute. Saeryn's eyes snapped to me. Shock, then warning. I raised both hands. This is not a bond, I said, turning to the council. It was never a claim. It was a gift. If your law cannot distinguish between claiming and giving, then your law is broken. Karis smiled, delighted. Bold and foolish, probably, I admitted. But I won't let you weaponize her loneliness. The words echoed. Too human. Too direct. Too true. Too. Saeryn inhaled sharply. The veil of light around her shimmered, an involuntary reaction, like a muscle twitch. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. You admit she is lonely. I admit she's been treated like a bargaining chip, I said. And she's still standing. That's not weakness, that's discipline. I turned toward Saeryn. If you must reject something, reject the frame they're forcing on you. For a second, the queen looked human. Not in face. In feeling. Then her expression hardened into sovereign stone. Envoy Kael Ron, Saeryn said, voice formal. You have spoken out of station. My stomach dropped. I had misread. I had pushed too far. And you have spoken truth, she continued, and the room cracked open. You will be punished. A triumphant hiss from the nobles. Saeryn lifted her hand. Not as traitor, as instrument. She addressed the council. By my authority, he is removed from diplomatic title and reassigned as steward of the lantern system, civilian administrator under direct royal writ. Silence, different now. Confused. Alarmed. Kari's smile vanished. You would place a human in charge of building, Saeryn said. Not ruling. Her gaze swept the platforms. You wanted him harmless. I will make him useful. The chancellor's voice tightened. And the bond? Saeryn looked directly at me. The bond is rejected. The words hit like ice. My chest hollowed out. The council exhaled in satisfaction. Saeryn's eyes did not soften. They couldn't, not here. But as she continued, her tone changed, precise, lethal. I reject the council's attempt to interpret a gift as a chain, she said. I reject the presumption that my destiny can be framed by your fear. She raised her chin. And I declare the lantern system the capital of my empire, not because of his name, but because you cannot bear the idea that a name can matter without your permission. Kari sputtered. This is madness. This is governance, Saeryn replied. They could not strike her. So they struck me. As guards escorted me from the hall, Vathrin stepped close enough to whisper without moving his lips. She rejected the bond, he murmured. But not you. Do not confuse theater with truth. I wanted to believe him. But the word rejected kept echoing like a funeral bell. And Saeryn, stone-faced, watched me leave without reaching out. That night, in the quiet of my assigned quarters, I stared at the star map alone. A capital without a bond. A queen without allies. And a human with nothing left but his stubbornness, wondering if he had just helped her win. Or helped her lose the only tenderness she had allowed herself. The lantern system smelled like new metal and old dust, construction scaffolds, fresh conduit, burned ozone from thruster wakes. It was not a jewel yet. It was a promise. My job, according to Saeryn's writ, was to make that promise real without becoming a political spark again. I built anyway. Humans arrived first. Engineers, habitat crews, negotiators who had never been treated as equals in a Virellian port. They moved with the calm hunger of people used to earning space the hard way. Virellians arrived later, stiff and suspicious, their honor ribbons pinned too tightly. They expected chaos. They got schedules, redundancies, and a human habit they didn't understand. People checking on each other without being ordered. One evening, a Virellian forewoman confronted me on a gantry overlooking the half-formed capital ring. You do not command by threat, she said, as if accusing me of a crime. I don't know how, I replied. She studied me, mandible ridges tightening. Then, how do you keep them working? I shrugged. I listen. I fix problems. I show up. She looked away, unsettled. That is not power. No, I said. It's responsibility. Weeks later, sabotage struck. A pressure valve in the main habitat spine failed, too precisely to be accident. Emergency shutters slammed down. Alarms flared. A section of the ring began to vent into space. Panic was contagious. So was calm, if someone carried it like a torch. I sprinted into the maintenance tunnel with 2 human techs and a Virellian safety officer who kept insisting protocol required waiting for royal authorization. Authorization won't bring back oxygen, I snapped. Move, Betty. The officer's crest flared in outrage. You cannot. Watch me, I said, and kept running. In the junction chamber, frost crawled across the walls. The valve housing hissed like an angry animal. The human tech beside me, Rena, shouted, Manual override's jammed. I'll cut it, I said. The Virellian officer recoiled. Cutting violates. Honor is doing what you said you'd do, I said through clenched teeth, then wedged myself into the narrow access gap. The metal was sharp. The cold bit. My gloves tore. I felt blood in my palm and kept going. Rena's voice wavered. Kael, you'll lose your hand, then I'll lose a hand, I said. Not people. The cut finally gave. The valve slammed shut with a violent thud. The hiss stopped. Silence. Then the return of air systems, a slow, grateful hum. I sat back hard against the wall, shaking. The Virellian officer stared at my bleeding hand like it was a foreign language. You risk yourself, he said, stunned. For workers. They're not workers, I replied, breathing hard. They're people, and this is our capital now. Ours. He swallowed. That word, ours. You speak as if you belong. I didn't, I admitted. Not until I built something with my hands. 2 days later, Queen Saeryn arrived, unannounced, without ceremonial fleet. Just one sleek royal cutter docking in the unfinished ring. The entire station froze. Virellian straightened. Humans stared. No one knew which set of rules to follow. Saeryn walked the gantries like she owned every bolt, because she did. Yet her gaze kept drifting to the people, not the architecture. When she reached me, she dismissed everyone with a tilt of her hand. Vathrin stood nearby, arms folded. I advised the council to let the sabotage stand, he said bluntly. It would have proven your project fragile. Saeryn's eyes narrowed. And yet it did not stand. Vathrin's voice softened just a fraction. Because he did. Saeryn looked at my wrapped hand. You were injured. I'm fine, I lied automatically. Saeryn's tone sharpened. Do not lie to me in my capital. I exhaled. It hurts. She stepped closer, gaze dropping to the bandage. Show me. I hesitated. Not because of pain. Because of what showing meant. Trust, vulnerability, invitation. Then I unwound the bandage. Saeryn's fingers, steady, cool, touched the edge of the cut. Not probing, not possessive. Careful. You were exiled by title, she said quietly, and yet you remained by action. I thought you rejected me, I said before I could stop myself. The words hung between us, heavier than the station's gravity. Saeryn's eyes lifted. In the council, I rejected a frame, she said. If I had accepted the bond as they defined it, they would have turned you into leverage and me into spectacle. So you chose theater, I said, bitter despite myself. Saeryn's jaw tightened. I chose survival. Then, softer, for both of us. I looked away, shame burning. I didn't understand. No, she agreed. You did not, and yet you built anyway. Her thumb brushed my knuckles, a small, deliberate touch. In my culture, a sovereign is expected to take, to acquire, to consume, and you? I asked. I am tired of taking, Saeryn said, voice low. I want an empire that can accept a gift without turning it into a weapon. Vathrin cleared his throat, behind us. Your radiance. The nobles are already whispering that the human has become your symbol. Saeryn did not turn. Then, let them whisper. She faced me fully. Kael Waran. You named a star without understanding our right. You spoke in council without station. You bled for a capital you did not own. Her voice steadied into formal cadence, the language of vows. State your intent now, under my law, with full knowledge. My heart hammered. This was the real test. Not etiquette. Not politics. Truth. Hein. I met her eyes. My intent is not to claim you, I said. It's to stand beside you when the room tries to make you smaller. I swallowed. And to keep building something that doesn't need cruelty to be strong. Saeryn's breath hitched, barely. Then she extended her hand, palm up, Virellian ritual for voluntary bond. Not ownership. Partnership. A public act, if anyone saw. A private risk, if only I did. I placed my hand in hers. The warmth between our palms spread like a promise that had finally found a language. Saeryn's fingers closed gently, not locking, just anchoring. You once said, she murmured, voice barely above the hum of life support, that you named the star as a joke. I did, I admitted. Saeryn's gaze shifted upward, toward the viewport, where Saeryn's lantern burned steady beyond the ring. And now? She asked. I felt the meaning turning inside my chest, deepening, reversing. That line was never the truth, I said. It was what I said because I was afraid of being laughed at. I tightened my grip, careful. The truth is, I named it because I wanted something in this galaxy to admit you mattered, even if no one else did. Saeryn's eyes softened for the first time without fear of witnesses. And I made it the capital, she said, because an empire that cannot be moved by honor and tenderness deserves to fall. Her voice steadied into sovereign certainty. Let them say you named it as a joke. Let them say I turned it into politics. She stepped closer until our foreheads nearly touched. Intimacy without impropriety. In the histories, she whispered, they will write. I named a star after her as a joke. She made it the capital of her empire. Her thumb brushed my pulse point again. And they will never understand that the joke was not the naming. What was it then? I asked, throat tight. That they believed power is only taken, Saeryn said. Not given. She straightened, still holding my hand, and turned toward the viewport, the half-built capital, the workers below, the star beyond. In my empire, she said, louder now. A declaration meant for walls that remembered, a gift is not a chain. A bond is not a cage. And honor is not a family crest. She glanced back at me, the smallest curve of a smile returning. Honor is the person who stays. Outside the viewport, the lantern star burned with quiet, stubborn light, no longer a private joke, no longer a political trap.
1 year.
A capital, a choice, a home.